Okay, so welcome to the crap shop where I had an idea today since I'm always worried about this stuff, to crush some steerer tubes with a regular stem, because this is a danger when you're cycling. These are hunks of cheap Chinese fork, and you can see they're actually the two different colors because these are combination carbon and glass, and they're fairly irregular. They've been very stiff in my experience, but I'm constantly worried about crushing them, because even high-end forks have catastrophic failure sometimes, especially if people don't properly use compression plugs. So I thought today we'll try to crush one of these. We'll see how much torque it takes to crush a hunk, and then we'll throw a plug in, and I'm sure be unable to crush it. Part of me wonders if we wouldn't be better off skipping the plugs and just doing an epoxy fill all the way down in there with something like 1 or 2 of these M6 nuts centered in the middle of that fill. Now, I'm not saying hard edge, I'm saying completely surrounded by filler, so that you have something maybe even better able to withstand the crushing forces than this, which is aluminum, but it's based on a wedge, which could come loose. Anyway, let's crush a hunk of fork. Need to grab a M5, 5mm. Okay, found the trusty little Venzo torque wrench. I don't know how well this thing focuses at close range. It's going to have to be good enough. So, put in the 5, loosen up. Okay. Yeah, that's, what is this one? Not magnetized? All right. So let's put a all right. So I gotta take my earplugs out that I was using to cut this stuff. Ouch, that was loud, because I won't hear it crack if I don't. So if we do this, we are at about 2 Newton meters there. I'll do about 3. That's actually quite a bit. This is probably more than I would put on a steerer by hand. There's 5. 5 feels like a lot. I don't know why anyone would go past 5. We're at 5 on this side. And you can see nothing much going on. And we've almost bottomed out. I have a theory that this thing might flex enough that it bottoms out before it cracks, because I've seen that happen before. That's quite a bit. That's 6 to 7 Newton meters right there, and that is way more than I think I would ever put on a fork steerer, and I always use a small hand tool like this anyway, so it's not like I would accidentally put a bunch on by, say, having a much longer lever arm using one of these. So here we are. We are at, I'm wearing safety glasses, by the way, about 8, 9, 10. I thought I heard something. It's actually getting hard to compress this anymore. Frankly, this thing's a lot tougher than I thought it would be. All right, that's 9 to 10. I'm quitting and going to leverage now. Let's see if we can break this, or if it's just going to. There it goes. And we are almost bottomed out. Nothing on that end. Well, there you have it. What I think that'll show is that we've made this oblong before we've even managed to crack it. Although we did hear that crack. Now, that could be because this thing is partly glass. And glass flexes a little bit better than carbon fiber because it's not as stiff. And so let's take it apart and see what happens. That was way more than I think anybody the least bit reasonable would clamp this down. I'm not suggesting that this means you should go ahead and crank yours down further. I was just curious, and I'm sharing that result. So here we go. I don't see anything obvious except maybe there. You can definitely see compression lines here along there where so the whole thing does look squeezed in. It's kind of bone shaped now where it was compressed. And of course, if you had it over compressed like that and you were reefing on handlebars, levering it back and forth, you'd probably have an even lousier time. I would say that that little line there is probably our crack. And we heard that slight cracking sound. But this thing held up pretty well. Let's put a plug in it. Tighten that plug from the inside and see if we can burst it. 'Cause that's always another one of my worries. This one's been pre-broken, so it might be easier. This is again, inexpensive Chinese brand compression plug. It is a Zito, which whenever I buy cheap Chinese parts, I always try to buy them from somebody who's trying to establish their own brand rather than buy something where they're patently trying to fake being a Western brand. You got enough potential problems without knowing right off the bat that they're liars. These, as you can see, if you're not familiar with them, are simple wedges. Squeeze these together. It pops out, gets bigger, and fills up the inside of your steerer tube, hopefully holding the plug in place as well as preventing you from crushing it by doing what I just did. So these things crank down pretty well. And then they stick in there like that. Now, the issue I always have is I'm always worried that when I crank it down before I get the headset on, or the stem on, that I'm going to break it. It's not really possible for me to hold it tight enough to really crank it any harder than that. I have another experiment design for us. Let's take one of these ones that are fresh, that I didn't break. Let's put a caliper on it. See if we can even register a noticeable outward flex. So if we put the caliper on this right about in the middle, we're about 28.46, 28.49, 28.60, 28. So between 28.45 and 28.6, so about 1/10 of a millimeter. Not around. Put this in, crank, and see if it gets any fatter. That is as hard as I can do it without twisting in my hand. And if you look at it from the bottom, it's going to look better. But is it really? Put this in the middle. Okay. 28.8, 28.7, 28.6, 28.5, 28.35. Let's see this again. 28.4, 6, 7. I'm going to go ahead and say that there's not a whole lot of perceptible difference there. If I move very slightly, I get up to 28.5 there, but 28.7, 28.9, 28.6. Maybe it's a little fatter up top. Or maybe I'm measuring badly. Let's take it out and look. Wow. All right, we were up on the edge. 28.4, 28.6, 28.6. So there you go. You crank it down, you can get maybe 0.15 to 0.2 millimeters of outward flex on this particular one. Of course, you would immediately be mashing it right back down with your stem. So in general, this is much stronger than I thought it was. Let's just squeeze it in the vise with some leverage and see when it breaks. All right, I don't have any way to tell you what the torque is here. I'm even gonna juice the result by taking our probably split edge, putting it on top, making sure this tube is well within, and let's go. This is not easy to push, actually. There it goes. Got it. And it pops back out. Very interesting. So there you have it for catastrophic failure, which I've always maintained as a carbon fiber rider. I haven't seen much of, and I've gone through plenty of broken carbon fiber parts. They do not, in my experience, just explode into nothingness all of a sudden. They kind of give you some little warning by creaky, creaky, creak before they go. And even then, they may not go all the way. So, man, can we actually get this thing to mash? Look at it. Geez, I'm going to look away here. All right, that is well and truly destroyed, and still doesn't want to come completely apart. So there you got your broken strands. Your vertical elements, which are what give you your stiffness, and not a ton in the way of circumferential, which is what you would expect for this, because what you really want is stiffness along the axis. The only place you can really crush it is the top, where you should have a plug-in. See, we delaminated it here, the two different layers of fibers. Let me give myself a nice splinter here, you just watch. You can see the inside. So this is kind of rare for cheap carbon fiber, I would say. The inner layers look better than the outside. Not bad. I would say that's not bad at all. I thought that would look a lot worse. There you have it. Seems to be a little bit harder to wreck a cheap carbon fiber Chinese steerer. Harder than I guessed anyway. Hope you enjoyed.